What's up everyone and welcome back to the MMA Zone. Today, let's get started with Conor McGregor reacts to Khabib footage. Recently, the UFC shared out classic footage of Khabib Nurmagomedov talking to UFC boss man Dana White in between rounds of his 2016 fight with Michael Johnson. Well, Khabib's arch nemesis Conor McGregor saw the post, and not surprisingly, the polarizing star just had to respond. Now, if you've never seen Khabib's fight with Johnson at UFC 205, some might call it a beatdown. Do yourself a favor and change that fact soon. Not only did Khabib smash Johnson throughout much of the fight, he could also be seen and heard talking to both his opponent and White during it. At the time, Khabib had gone 7-0 in the UFC, and that night, Conor was set to fight Eddie Alvarez for the lightweight crown. Not only was McGregor establishing himself as one of the biggest stars in MMA, he was becoming one of the most recognizable names in all of combat sports. So in between rounds, Khabib informed White, "Be careful, and I'm gonna smash your boy." At another juncture, the Dagestani smashing machine asked Dana if he wanted to talk for a little bit. Well, after the footage was recently posted again, McGregor responded with this: "Show him trying to do it against me, ha ha ha." McGregor's response here is kind of interesting, given that the consensus is Khabib also dominated the Irish star in their massive 2018 fight. Khabib also talked and taunted Conor in their clash as well. But granted, McGregor did have more success against the legend than Johnson did. Case in point, Johnson only landed 20 strikes against Khabib, while McGregor managed to score with 96. Up next, Michael Chandler receives warning for Charles Oliveira fight. Michael Chandler is finally booked for his next fight, as the former Bellator champion will face Charles Oliveira at UFC 309. But while that fight almost certainly won't be as big as a showdown with Conor McGregor, both Chael Sonnen and Daniel Cormier believe Chandler has a much tougher challenge ahead. Unless you're new to MMA, you know that for nearly 2 years now, the expectation was that Chandler and McGregor were going to battle next. The two were finally booked to fight this past June, but a broken pinky toe to McGregor punted the matchup again. So more recently, it was confirmed that Chandler will throw hands with Oliveira on November 16th at MSG. The fight will give Chandler an opportunity to avenge one of his 8 career losses, as DuBronx submitted him in round 2 of their 2021 fight. But while weighing in on the matchup during a recent episode of their ESPN show, Sonnen and Cormier agreed that Chandler could be in trouble at UFC 309. Here's some of what DC had to say. "Chandler will never get a bigger fight, but he did get a tougher fight. Charles Oliveira is still fighting at the top of the game. Charles Oliveira was scheduled to fight for the World Championship and then got hurt with the big cut. Charles Oliveira fought Sarukian and fought him competitively, who's now fighting for the world title. These guys are as good as they come. Michael Chandler, though, has sat, and that's the problem." And here's some of what Sonnen had to say. "Charles Oliveira is in for a rough night out. Not to mention, it's a matchup they've already done. You don't get better at a sport by not doing it. Chandler's been on the sidelines waiting to do it. I gotta think that Oliveira is a meaningful favorite here. I would think the line's only about 2-to-1.5. But I think those people are going to be very confident. I like that he's back. It's a very tough night out." Now, even if you're a huge McGregor fan, you gotta admit, it's kind of hard to disagree with Sonnen and DC here. After all, McGregor has not fought since 2021, and DuBronx has been busy fighting the top of the lightweight food chain. Not only that, but Oliveira has already beaten Chandler. But what do you think? Does Chandler have to climb a much steeper and more precarious mountain now that he's facing DuBronx than if the McGregor fight had materialized next? Up next, Henry Cejudo goes off on Sean O'Malley for comment. It remains to be seen if Henry Cejudo and Sean O'Malley ever end up fighting. But based on recent comments Triple C fired at the former bantamweight champion, it seems pretty clear he still has plenty of beef with Sugar. Even before Cejudo officially ended his retirement and returned to the UFC, the decorated fighter was taking verbal shots at O'Malley. This trend never really ended, even though the King of Cringe proceeded to drop fights to Aljamain Sterling and then Merab Dvalishvili. Well, following O'Malley's loss to Dvalishvili at UFC 306, he was quick to point out that he in fact defended more takedowns in his fight with Merab than Cejudo did in his fight with the Georgian Machine. Not only that, while discussing the recent fight, Sugar and someone from his team, it sounded like Tim Welsh, got Cejudo's wrestling creds pretty wrong.
"I'm telling you guys, you can't have Merab as the champ. He's boring as f. I just rewatched the fight. I tried to make it on boring as possible, tried getting up, defended. I got up. I actually stuffed more takedowns than Henry Cejudo. You guys know who that guy is? He used to be a champ. He used to fight in the UFC. I think he won like silver or bronze. Was it bronze or silver? Henry won.
Bronze.
Bronze medalist back in 08 or whatever it was. But I stuffed more takedowns than him."
Those comments prompted this response from Cejudo. "The only thing you ever won the gold in is being the world's biggest C word. You're so in denial, you should move to Egypt. They should take some of Diddy's baby oil and put it on your dry V." Now, if you need a refresher, in Merab's fight with Cejudo this past February, he completed 5 of 11 takedowns on the Olympic gold medalist wrestler. And yes, chances are O'Malley knew full well that Cejudo won the gold, but he couldn't resist taking that shot. Against O'Malley, Merab completed 6 of 15 takedowns. So against Cejudo, he was successful 40% of the time, and against O'Malley, he completed 45% of them. But all that aside, do you see O'Malley beating Merab if they fight again? And would you be interested in seeing him fight Cejudo at this juncture? Or has that ship sailed? Oscar De La Hoya praises UFC 306 and bashes Dana White. A couple of weeks ago, Oscar De La Hoya raised more than a few eyebrows when he announced he was going to be at UFC 306 and then sarcastically noted he was looking forward to seeing Dana White. Well, following the historic event, De La Hoya acknowledged he had an amazing time, and not surprisingly, he's also resumed trashing the UFC president. If you follow boxing, then you know that the decorated boxer turned promoter has feuded with Dana White for years. When De La Hoya announced he was going to be at UFC 306, the proclamation made the rounds. What wasn't surprising, however, was that Oscar used the opportunity to diss Canelo Alvarez's fight with Edgar Berlanga, which was that same night. Canelo and De La Hoya are also well-documented enemies now, after their business relationship went off the rails several years ago. Well, during a recent Clapback Thursday video De La Hoya released, he had this to say about UFC 306 and White.
Alright, so last weekend gave me some good material, so let's get into it right now. Okay guys, so UFC Noche. So I was true to my word. I did attend last Saturday. I sat in Turkey's box upstairs, and I have to be honest with you, it was beautiful. It was spectacular. It looked really cool. The production value was there. Everything was amazing. The fights were actually really good. So congratulations to Turkey for footing the bill on this and making his celebration of the Mexican culture come to life. And Dana, I know this wasn't your idea or vision. Nothing ever is at the UFC. You're the Fertitta's errand boy. But I'm always honest and fair, and I want to praise the production. UFC Noche was a good time, and I really enjoyed it.
Now, if you missed it, White has also continued to pile on De La Hoya whenever he's been asked about the Golden Boy. So it's not like their hostilities ever really ceased. Chances are, White will be asked to comment on Oscar's latest verbal barrage, and the UFC boss man will once again return fire. Up next, Dana White gets exposed by Steve-O for watching Jake Paul fight. Dana White and Jake Paul have been exchanging verbal jabs for quite some time now, and the UFC boss has repeatedly blasted Paul's boxing endeavors. So when Steve-O recently claimed he watched Paul fight while hanging out with Dana White at a UFC event no less, more than a few heads were likely turned. Paul recently spoke with Steve-O via his YouTube channel, and while doing so, the latter made this surprising report.
I can tell you that when you boxed Nate Diaz, that night there was a UFC fight night in Nashville, Tennessee. I had arranged to fly to Nashville, Tennessee because I was very interested in looking at properties. You know, that's why I was in Nashville for this fight night. It was Corey Sandhagen fought Rob Font. And the main event was like dreadfully boring. Like Dana like dipped out of the arena or whatever. And then after the fight, like I was walking out and we were like, oh, let's say what's up to Dana. We go into this room and he's just turned on you fighting Nate Diaz. And I watched you fight Nate Diaz with Dana.
Now, at the end of the day, if White was going to watch one of Paul's fights, the fact he did so for the Diaz bout shouldn't be that shocking. After all, Diaz remains one of the biggest names in MMA, and that fight marked the first time Nate had competed since completing his UFC deal. So chances are, White was just hoping to see the Stockton star take Paul out. That, as you may recall, did not happen though. Paul won the fight by unanimous decision. Deveison Figueiredo wants title fight over Umar Nurmagomedov. There are a lot of signs pointed to Umar Nurmagomedov challenging Merab in his first title defense as the UFC's bantamweight champion. But just like the new champ's take, Deveison Figueiredo believes he should be next. On account of Nurmagomedov being 6-0 in the UFC to date and his recent victory over Corey Sandhagen, which moved him into the number 2 spot at the rankings, the consensus is he's next for Merab. Umar also said that he's been told by the UFC that he has wrapped up a title shot. But before and after Merab defeated Sean O'Malley at UFC 306, he argued that Figueiredo is more deserving. It seems clear that God of War agrees with the new champion, as the Brazilian fighter recently told MMA Fighting this: Umar just got here. He just had his first fight against a tough guy, and I'm sure he has to get tested more to fight someone else first, maybe O'Malley. I'm already tested. I left a division where I was champion and moved up and fought strong guys. I had no easy fights. I definitely present more danger to Merab. I'm ready to fight him. People have been calling me out since I got to this division. Maybe they think I'm an easy fight, but I show them otherwise in the octagon. I'm ready, man. I'm ready to fight for the belt. I want to win that title. Now, it's true that Figueiredo has scored victories over contenders Chito Vera, Rob Font, and a former champion Cody Garbrandt since he moved up to bantamweight. One could also argue that Figueiredo's UFC resume is more impressive, since he's also the former flyweight champion, but he's also not that long removed from a loss to Brandon Moreno, and having another Nurmagomedov fight for a UFC belt is a storyline that makes headlines. What's also interesting is that Sandhagen is claiming that Figueiredo turned down the opportunity to fight him, and on his YouTube channel, The Sandman reported this. Figgy turned down the fight against me in September, which is kind of whack, because I thought that Figgy was a little bit more about that life than that. I'm kind of actually hurt that Figgy doesn't want to fight me in December, but maybe he wants to take the easier fights. I don't know what that dude's plans is. But what do you think? Could Figgy just be holding out for the Merab fight? Or is he ducking Sandhagen because he's hunting for easier fights, as the Sandman claims? Charles Oliveira was asked what he would prefer between a title fight or Conor McGregor after defeating Michael Chandler. Charles said this in the interview with Leiter Viana. "Can you guarantee that if I beat Conor, I'll be next in line? Because anyways, the title fight will be between Sarukian and Islam, so I'll have to wait anyways. So why not make a lot of money with Conor?" What do you guys think? Do you want to see a fight between Conor McGregor and Charles Oliveira?
Are you fighting in 2024? Dana White recently saying 2025 now.
It'll be 2025.
Okay. When do we think?
You know, we'll see. My opponent that I had scheduled, Chandler, has got matched.
Are you upset by that?
No, you know, it is what it is. I just take it on board and just rock on. My job is just to go to the gym, be in the gym, be in shape. One thing is for sure, whenever it is and wherever it is, I will be 100% ready. And that's all I can focus on right now.
2 fights left though. Do you think you get those 2 fights in 2025?
I must. It's the promised lands, you know? So we'll see.
Okay, last one. Who is facing you when you return? Last one.
Man, who knows nowadays? It doesn't matter. It does not matter. Just as long as I can get back and, you know, whoever, that's it. I'd like it to be Chandler. I'd like to get that squared away, you know? So I wish him well against Oliveira, but let's see how it goes.
Khamzat Chimaev talks about his visa issues in a recent video posted on YouTube. He said this in the video: "They promised me a title eliminator every time. When I fought Gilbert Burns, it was the #1 contender fight. After the Kamaru Usman fight, I didn't get the title shot either. Now it's the 3rd time. Let's see. Hopefully they will give me the title shot. As long as Donald Trump is not the president, we can't come back to the US." Khamzat believes that if the Republican Party can win, he'll be granted his US visa because of Dana White's close ties with Trump, saying, "Of course, he's a Republican like Dana White. I think they will be friends with Russia again." If Trump loses, do you think Dana White will give Khamzat a chance to fight for the title? Can the promotion risk having a fighter that cannot fight in the US? Let us know what you think. Next up, we have the mayor of Chicago announcing Belal Muhammad Day on September 20th.
Chicago, we do hereby proclaim September 20th, 2024, Belal Muhammad Day.
Top comments. Conor versus Nate Diaz is honestly the best fight the UFC can make for him. Both fighters are in a decline, and it's a good way to bring back a lot of the casuals back into the sport. They can even make it for a special belt like BMF and make it main event. I think Sean is just trolling the internet by pretending to be a sore loser. O'Malley can't accept he lost, and now his fan base are like, "Nah bro, he's not delusional, he just has CTE." Merab is so funny, man. It's just so funny to think that Belal and Merab, who get called out for being boring, are the most entertaining fighters outside of the octagon on social media. Belal with his Usman clapbacks and Merab doing O'Malley skits.